Welcome to Unit 2 Psychological Models of Abnormality. Session 11 Psychodynamic Model of Abnormality is continued. So far, we have discussed the meaning of psychodynamic model of abnormality, levels of consciousness, structure and dynamics of personality, psychosexual stages of development. Now, let's come to the learning objectives of this particular session. Understanding of the ego defense mechanisms, understanding the various ego defense mechanisms, session outcomes, knowledge of or the comprehension of the meaning of ego defense mechanisms, knowledge about the various types of ego defense mechanisms. Now, let us start our discussion about the ego defense mechanisms. Ego defense mechanisms are aimed at reducing anxiety. When anxiety becomes overwhelming, then ego will intervene and employ these mechanisms in order to reduce the anxiety and protect oneself from devaluation. For initially, it was Sigmund Freud who spoke about the ego defense mechanisms. Later on, Anna Freud, Adler, and others have also contributed for the same. Ego defense mechanisms are mainly unconscious, and their main purpose or objective is to protect the ego. Now, let us try to understand each of the ego defense mechanisms in detail. First one is displacement. As the name itself suggests, what we do is the channelized or pent up feelings of mostly hostility will be expressed towards an individual or object which is unrelated to the actual source that has caused the feeling of hostility. Usually, if the original source is more dangerous, then we divert it to an unrelated and less dangerous source so that our pent up emotions are expressed. For example, if a worker is blasted by his boss, then he might come home and yell at his wife, and the frustrated wife may express her frustration towards her child, who in turn may break a toy or harm the pet animal. Next important ego defense mechanism is projection. In projection, individual will ascribe or attribute their own unacceptable ideas, thoughts or feelings to other people. What they do is, for example, if a student fails in an examination, then he or she may blame the teacher as being partial or unreasonable in her valuation. So projection is when unacceptable desires of the self are projected or attributed to other people. Next one, rationalization. Rationalization is the third important type of ego defense mechanisms in which a good reason or a contrived reason or justification will be thought of in order to justify one's actions or behavior. There are two approaches in rationalization. One is Sour-Grapes. In this kind of an approach, whatever a person or individual does not get, they will justify stating that it is good that they did not get a particular thing that they desired for initially. Second thing is a silver lining, which is a more productive kind of an approach wherein the individual feels whatever happens for their good, or it was a blessing in disguise. So these are the two sub approaches in rationalization. Next one, reaction formation. In reaction formation, the individual will express diametrically opposite kind of an emotion towards the person. For example, if a mother has hatred towards a child, she might outwardly express overindulgence or too much of love. Next one, regression. Regression, as the name itself suggests, regress means to go back or to move back or to retreat to an earlier stage of development in order to escape from responsibility. A worker who doesn't know how to handle his work or the pressure may always try to criticize or may just try to behave in an immature way. Repression is another ego defense mechanism in which unpleasant ideas are pushed from the conscious into the unconscious so that it does not hurt the individual. If a person has an idea to murder his parent, then this idea is unacceptable and painful, hence, it will be pushed into the unconscious. This is what is called as repression. Next one, sublimation. This is supposed to be one of the most productive kind of ego defense mechanism. Sexual and aggressive instincts can be channelized in socially productive channels. Okay, wherein sexual and aggressive instincts, which are not accepted by the society, if expressed openly, should be channelized in such a way that it will be accepted by the society. For example, aggressive instinct can be channelized by becoming a boxer or a soldier or even a surgeon. Sexual instinct can be channelized in ways wherein an individual may become a poet or a sculptor. These are some of the ego defense mechanisms. Now let's move on to the summary. In this session, we have discussed the meaning of ego defense mechanism, and the purpose of ego defense mechanism is to reduce anxiety. When the anxiety is overwhelming, ego will resort to ego defense mechanisms in order to protect self. We have discussed a few ego defense mechanisms like displacement, projection, rationalization, reaction formation, regression, repression, and sublimation. One thing to be borne in mind is ego defense mechanisms are helpful if they are used within certain limits. If they are overused or if they are used too much, then it may result in or it may become a cause for abnormality. Thank you.